If you were to ask me if I was worried about what Howie Roseman is doing and the losses the Eagles have had on this defensive side after winning a Super Bowl just a month ago, if you were to ask me if I was worried, I'd shake my head and say no. The main reasons why I would say that is because of the money that a few of these players have gotten. Now, it's one thing with Darius Slay. It kind of sucks we weren't able to get him back on another one-year deal. It's a shame that we also had to see Isaiah Rodgers leave. Burks, our backup linebacker, also had to go and get another opportunity elsewhere. It sucked. And of course, CJ Gardner-Johnson is the latest blow, and you saw how questionable I was about that yesterday. However, I, for one, for the first time in a long time, am very much fully in trust with Howie Roseman. For the first time in a long time. It's been a very long time. The only thing that I question, the only thing that's on my mind, is we've seen a Super Bowl reigning champion Eagles team plummet. To be fair, that 2018 team got hot at the right time, and if it weren't for an Alshon Jeffrey drop that turned into a Marshawn Lattimore tip drill interception, we don't know what happens in that final drive against the Saints in the divisional round. That's very fair. But even so, that team went 9-7. That team lost the division. That team played poorly up until November. We got blown out 48-7 by the New Orleans Saints, the same team that we got knocked out in the playoffs by. It wasn't a pretty year. And that's where I look at Howie Roseman, because that team was riddled with injuries. A lot of old heads and a lot of players past their prime. This team is not the same. They're not the same, but that's what scares me. The veteran leadership. That's why I, for one, am questioning a few of these moves, specifically CJ Gardner-Johnson. That's about it. I understand being a little bit frustrated that we couldn't get back Milton Williams or Josh Sweat, but at the same time, you saw how much money they both got. Sweat might have been worth it. Sweat might have been worth it because his whole career has been a very quiet but very successful Eagles career. He's had a good, 6, 7 years with us. 40-something sacks. He had 11 in 2022. That was the year I think we should have paid him money, in 2022. No one talks about that. He had 11 sacks in 2022. That should have been the year we paid him. Regardless, Milton Williams, that one was a big one. People could say what they want, but he 100% in my mind benefited off of having Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis to bounce off of in the middle of that pass rush. That's just me. I'm not saying he's not a good player or a great one. I just think that he got severely overpaid. Got his money. Congrats to him. Wish him nothing but the best in New England. But still, I was surprised that that's how much he got. But regardless, clearly the moves that have been made were not just necessity, but the ones that we felt comfortable making. We needed to open up more cap space to make other moves. And now we have a lot of draft capital that we can make more moves with. Primarily trades. I'm expecting the Eagles to be heavy on trading for other talented players. Whether we get seasoned vets, like, I don't know. I'm just throwing out a name because we need one in the safety. In the safety group, just for depth, say Kyle Hamilton. I know. I'm just saying, hypothetically, somebody like that. That's where my mind is. I think Howie Roseman is definitely looking at ways of keeping our young players, the starters, the main focus of this team, staying young, just building a different team than what we've had in the past. And what we've had in the past is a lot of older players leading this team, keeping it young. I am fully on board with that. But in some moments, some areas, like, for example, Lane Johnson on the offensive line, and on the defensive side last year, Brandon Graham on the defensive line, have at least one guy that's a veteran that can help lead this young team. We have a lot of very young, talented players that could definitely blossom into leaders. I'm looking at Cooper DeJean. I'm looking at Nakobe Dean, who's already kind of picked up that role. Zach Bond, obviously, right now might be that guy with Nakobe Dean still recovering from an injury. And on the offensive side, you got Hurts, you got Saquon, you got AJ Smitty, you got everybody on that offensive line. Like, the leaders are everywhere on this team, and they're growing into them outside of course, those I would say main three with Hurts, AJ, and Saquon. But even so, this team just needs to be careful moving forward. I know Howie has a plan, and I'm fully believing in him for the first time in a long time, simply due to the fact that he is focusing on a younger core of players as opposed to an older, more seasoned, veteran-heavy team. That's what scares me with the Commanders. Not because I think they'll be good, but because I think they're relying on them too much because they haven't been able to develop young talent that well. They're putting all of their chips on Jaden Daniels to be able to be this young superstar to carry them to the promised land with guys like Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz and the rest of the crew that are much older, which is not a bad thing. I'm just saying, I think that they're leaning too much into that when they could be having, and, obviously they traded for Deebo Samuel. Terry McLaurin is he's not young anymore. He is a veteran on that team now. So they're really they're playing a risky game. And that's why I look at the Commanders and I say, we'll see how they go. But I like where the Eagles are at. Let me know your thoughts.